Hello, this is a tutorial on how to make a model for the source engine in Blender 2.8. If you're using any version lower than 2.8, say 279, 278, it's going to be quite different to what you've got here. If you're following along today, I'd suggest you go and download Blender 2.8 just to streamline things a bit because they have moved a few things around. This tutorial assumes that you already know the basics of Blender, but I will tell you bits and pieces just to help you along. Okay, so you've got that, and then we'll need some wheels. So when you make your wheels for the bogies, so these objects here, so you have cube, which is the visual mesh in this case. You don't have to, but it's a good idea to change this to what you want the model to be. If I can stop having a stroke, not locomotive, and then we'll call this test for now. So that's locomotive test, and what I like to do is just to keep things organized. I will make this bogey the same. Sorry, this is the bogey, and then we'll go bogey test, and that's going to be the object for the bogies. So each different model, of course, needs its own object. So what I like to do with bogies is separate the wheels off. So if you have a body group on your model, if you've played any Source game, you'll know what a body group is. You will want to have that as a separate model. A separate object. So in this case, I like to keep these pretty simple or pretty uniform. So I'll go bogey test wheel. And now that can be a body group of bogey test. So it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it wheels for bogey. You can do that. I've found if you have spaces in your model, in your object names, when you go to export it, it's not going to let you do some things like when you go and compile your model and you've got a space in the name of your object, it's going to do some very strange things. So it's generally just best to avoid spaces where possible. And for the second one, this is just for show, so I'm just going to have this as a extra. I like to put extra next to it. You don't have to. It doesn't matter what you call the second thing. I like to lock that because you're not going to want to touch that. This is the bogey that we're going to put in the game, and this is the bogey that's just going to stay in Blender, just so then you have two bogies to look at. A lot of people, they like to have their origin on the top of the bogey, basically where the mount point is going to be. Assigning materials, again, there's proper tutorials out there to assign them, but basically how I do it is like that, and I'll go here. Okay, so with source materials, you need to have your materials in Blender the same name as the material in the source game. So if you're using, for example, Grove's proper textures, you will put the name as enamel underscore black. Nothing else. You can't spell this wrong. This is very important. You spell this right. And you can just change the color. The color that you set to the materials in game won't affect the material at all. All that matters is what you've called the material, and as long as you get the name of the material right, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter. You can make this pink if you wanted to, and it'll still show up as enamel black if you got the same material name. But I like to put the color, basically what it would look like in game, just so then you can tell what you've assigned. And we'll make another one. So the grid texture is just grid B. We'll assign that one to the top. So with if it's important for you to know where the texture is mapped, it's a good idea to put the texture onto the model in Blender. Otherwise, you don't need to worry. So things like the grid for positioning the bogie, or the vents on the side. If you need to see the vents for the, I don't know, the radiator or something like that, you want to put those on. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. Proper PNG, I'll include a link to it in the description. Just this is Grove's proper textures as PNG files. So with source, the textures are two different files. So one of them is VMT, which tells you where the VTF file is, and the VTF file is what you actually see inside of the game. So I've got this to convert all the VTFs to PNGs, because you need to have a PNG or something like that to use in Blender. You can't put VTFs in, it's just not compatible. So we're going to go to miscellaneous grids, grid B, and open that one. And now it's assigned the grid to there. It's a little hard to see, but it is there. So now I'm just going to move the origin of both the bogie and the wheels to 3D cursor, like that. And now that's where the origin is, so you can just put them back. Doesn't have to be accurate. I'll also put a mount on the bottom here. Cylinder. See, now that you've moved it, you can't change the properties of the cylinder, so you can't add any more vertices to it. You have to spawn another one. But this is fine. I like 24 for bogie mounts. They're pretty good. You could do 18. I wouldn't go any lower than 18, honestly. You could do 16, I guess. 12, that's not enough, I'd say. Everyone has their own opinion, by the way, on how many vertices to use. Some people like to make their bogies look like 50-cent coins, and that's completely up to them. It's their model. But me personally, I prefer to just add a little more oomph to the vertices, so it just looks a little more. I don't know if professional's the right word. Maybe just generally looks better. So the wheel texture, the one that everyone uses, is just called wheel. It's a very clever name. And I'll add another mount for the second bogie here. And now we'll make the collisions for this. So I'll go here. And so with collisions, each piece, so it needs to be made out of multiple pieces, and each piece needs to be convex. If you have a cube, that is convex. And if you have a cube and you do that, and you do that, that's not convex. That's what you call concave. You can have pieces like this, but they need to be made up of two separate pieces. So if you edge split like that, this is what I like to do. You just edge split and then go F. That fills the face. And now it is two separate pieces. So these are both convex. As long as it isn't kind of digging into itself like that, then you should be fine. So there's a few ways to do the collisions. You can be really precise with it if you want. You can spend forever getting it completely accurate. Um, in my opinion, just do the collisions by eye, and that'll do just fine. So basically what we're doing here is we're making this as basic as we need it, or as complex as we need it. So if you can get away with making it really basic, then that's really good. Um, if you have a curved thing, so see how I'm doing these here, you wouldn't, so if you get each piece here, I'll just do this. So if you do that, so don't do this. So don't, I'll just show you so you can see it better. So don't make them really curvy like this. You don't need to do that. You can do that, but why? Why do that? Just make it simple like this. For mounts, I just put a square. So we're basically just drawing a box around everything. That's basically what we're doing. Now, a handy trick for making collisions, if you have a front wall and a back wall, for example, or you have two sides and you just want to make a sort of a piece joining the two, just copy like the two edges here and bridge them with the F, and we'll go like this. So if we look at the wireframe here, so you see how this is made up of, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces for the cab. So for doors, you can have a hole for the door if you want. For interior doors, for doors that have like a hinge on it, people might want to add a swinging door to it. As laggy as that would be, some people might want to do that, so you can just add a little hole like that. You want there to be good collisions for where people would normally add things. So if that was your lamp and you wanted someone to be able to put a bulb inside of it, then you're going to need to do collisions for this as well. So this is all I would worry about for collisions. So you see this headlamp it is kind of complex, but I would just do it like this because you just need somewhere to put the bulb for the headlight. You don't need to round all the edges for it. You can do that. You can, but you're going to run out of pieces. There is a limit on how many pieces you can have in a model. If you want to know how many pieces you've got already, what I like to do, you select everything, and if you look down here, this is all of your vertices, edges, faces, tries, and a couple of other little details there. So if you look at the faces here, you see we've got 120 faces. It's handy to get your calculator out for this. So we've got 120 faces, and each piece that we've got here has got 6 sides on it. So if we divide this by 6, then we've got 20 pieces on this model. That's pretty good. You can have less, you can have more, but generally, the less you have, the better. Now, if you had a curved roof, so I'll just come up to the bottom of the roof, and so you add a couple of more shapes to the roof. So you can do that, and then I would just go like this, and then maybe that. And that's all I would do. So if you look here, so that is the visual model for what you will see. And you want your visual model to be pretty because that's what you're actually going to see. For your collision model, you see there is much less segments on this, and that is what you want. You can even join these two pieces because they're still convex, and then you can delete the extra face in here, like that. And so now we've got a convex roof, like that. That's actually a collision model. You see, this is a basic shape. So this is the original model, and this is what we've got now. So you can just see that you look at the wireframe of each model. So this is all made up of little pieces, and that is kind of what you want. For this you'll need a program called Blender Source Tools. I'll just get that for you now. I think this is the right one. Okay, so we go here. That's the Valve developer community website. There's a lot of really handy information on here. I'll put a link to this website, I suppose. I'll put a link to everything, all of the tools you need. So this is Blender Source Tools. So this is for 2.8 and up. This is the one that we're using, so we can just download that. You'd click that link. I've already got it. So you download it, and then you go into your add-ons, which is under Preferences, Add-ons. Wait for it. There it is. And then you'll go. Where is it? Here we go. So you'll have an add-on called Blender Source Tools. You can also search for it here. If you can't find it, just go Blender, then Blender Source Tools, and that, and you would tick that. So to you, when you first get this, it'll look like this. Just tick this box, and now it's enabled. If it doesn't work, first try refreshing it, and then you will look in here. You should see a tab for Source Engine Export pop up. And if you don't, I would just quit out of Blender and then load back in, and it should be there. And then you go to your export path, and this is basically just where you want to export your model to. I'm going to export it to the desktop for this example. So the engine path. You will need to download Source SDK base 2013 single player is the one I use. And what that is basically, if we I'll go to my E drive, and we'll go Steam Libraries, Steam Apps, Common. Nope, not Garry's mod. I'm too used to clicking that. 2013 single player. So this will be on Steam. So you go on the Steam here, and you would go. It's been a while since I've got it now. Source. So it should show up here. This is what you need to get. So however you get this tool, you'll need to get that. And then it'll show up here. So this is the engine. This is the engine here, and that's the actual hl2.exe file. So this is the path that you need. So you accept that, and it'll be red. I'm not sure why it's red. It works just fine. I'll just put these selection to active. So I'll put these into the correct place here, and so that's the collisions. Last thing. So your collision model, for whatever reason, you need to shade it smooth. You need to change it to SMD. So you'll have this cube 010. If you look in here, that is the collision model. I'll just rename that for simplicity's sake. So test and then cols is what I do my collision models with. Test has got a lemon enamel black. That should be just fine for our purposes. And then we'll export these two. This is just, I'm just exporting it again. I don't need to, but here we go. And they're exported. So you'll see they're all on their desktop now. Okay, so this file here, this is what you call a QC file. And what a QC file is it basically, so this is basically your code to get your model to compile. So the first line here is model name. That's the name of what the model will be in the game. So this is the 81 class model from my model pack, and that is locomotive81.mdl. That is important. Put MDL at the end of the model name. So if we want to call this our locomotive test MDL. Whoops. Save that. Not done yet, actually. So CD materials. So CD materials is where your textures will be. If you're just using one CD materials, then you put one. In this case, we're using Grove's proper textures, so it'll be under models / proper textures. If you don't know the path to the textures that you need to use, so you would go into, I've got it here already, Garry's mod materials, and from the materials tab you can go models and proper textures, and that's, so you only need this. So don't put materials, don't type that, it already knows to look in the materials folder, so just add on models / proper textures, and that's what we've got here. So that's our materials, and if you want to add more, you can go models, new guy, and that'll be your own materials. I strongly suggest that you don't make your own materials unless you really need one. There's already a massive pack here, proper textures, which has basically everything you need. But if you have custom things, so say you had some decals that you added to your model and they're not in proper textures, you're going to have to add your own materials here. So that is basically the materials that the model is going to use. So we go here, and this is the scale. For porting from Blender to source, a scale of 39.3 is good for the default settings of Blender. So that's for the scale. And surface prop, that's basically what the model will act as. In this case, the model's made out of metal, so you can leave it as metal here. Or if it's made out of wood, if it's a wooden train, you can change the surface prop to wood. If it's made out of glass. If it's made out of slippery slime. There is a list for the surface props that you can have, and I'll link that in the description as well. In this case, the model is metal. So if your model is made out of more than one thing, so if it has little bits of wood or little bits of plastic on it or something like that, you can't have more than one surface prop. You need to pick basically the one that I would pick, the one that's made out of mostly. So if it's mostly made out of metal, just go with metal, and etc. So body, this is the main body of the model. You will need this, and I'd just leave this as body. I wouldn't bother changing it. And then this is the SMD that it'll use for the main body. So if we look here, we've got locomotive test.smd, and that's what we need to put in here. So we'll put in locomotive test smd, and while I'm thinking about it, I'll just remove that because we're not actually using any extra materials on this model. We're only using the proper textures. And this is the sequence. You'll need sequence idle, and then I would just put the same model here, test, and FPS 30, you can leave that as it is. Okay, so these are your body groups. So anytime you have a body group, I'll just clear all of these. And I'm just going to save this to the desktop so then I don't overwrite what I've already got. That one, save that. And so these are the body groups of the model. In this case, it doesn't actually have any. But if you were working on the bogie and you wanted to change the body group for the wheels, you'd maybe put the name as remove wheels. This is what the body group's going to be called in the game. So this here, that's what the body group's going to be called. And this here is the actual SMD. So for the wheels, it was locomotive test wheels. And that is what it will have by default. So the one at the top of the list is what the body group will be when you spawn it in, and then it'll go down from there. So if you wanted to have a different kind of wheels, just say you had locomotive test and you had like cheese wheels, or you had I don't know, wooden wheels, or you had upside down wheels. That'd be all different options for your body group. So these are all your options. So by default, it'd be locomotive test wheels, and then if you set the body group to the next one, cheese wheels, next one, wooden wheels, next one, upside down wheels, and so on. And if you want your body group to just have nothing in it, you just put blank. So if you have wheels and you have either the wheels are visible or invisible. So you have the wheels here and they're visible, and blank is what you put if you want it to be invisible. And that is pretty much all you need to know for body groups. Again, with the origin for the body groups, you have to make sure that they line up. So in here, you see the origin, that's this little orange dot. And you'll see that the collisions and the locomotive test are in exactly the same place. So you see these little dots, those are the origin of the model. And you just have to make sure they're in the same place. And if they're in the same place, then you need to make sure that while they're in the same place, that all of the things here line up. Now that we've got the body groups covered, so we'll move on to the collision model. So what the collision model is this collision. This is the collision model here. So you would put here locomotive test and then cols. That's just the name of the model. Here, that's the mass. So that's basically how heavy it is. This is in kilograms. So if you're an American, you might need to figure out what the weight of your locomotive should be, and then convert that to that. Also keep in mind that part of the locomotive weight is also the bogies. So you'll need to deduct the weight of the bogies from the total weight, and then so if it was 15 tons or 15 tons like that, and each bogie was like 2,500, then you'd minus 2,500 times 2 off of that, so then you'd end up with 10,000, and then that's your locomotive weight. Concave, so this is what you need for your collisions to be more than just a box. So this is a concave collision model. but your concave collision model is made up of convex pieces, and that's what you want. So if you have your collision model and it's more than just a box, what I would do, well, what you need to do is set it to concave, and you'd add that in, and that's what that does. That just makes sure that the collision model is not just a box. If you don't put that in, if you don't put concave in, it'll shrink wrap the collisions around itself, so it'll just make the collisions convex, which is not what you want.
Because then all of that work you did to get the model to have the right collisions is going to go down the toilet, basically. So you'll need to
have concave here, like that. So mass center. So mass center is where the center of gravity is, basically. So in this model, so the origin is right here on the bottom, and I'll need to move the collision or the origin back to where it should be. So origin, 3D cursor, there we go. And so this is the origin of the model, and that's where the mass center originates from. So if you got it as mass center 0, 0, 0, then the center of gravity will be right here. And for locomotive bodies, I would just put them right here, right on the bottom. That's where I put mine. And that will mean that your locomotive won't try and topple off the track. If you have it too high, then it'll be top heavy, and when you go around a curve, it'll tip over, basically. So just make sure that your mass center is low enough. In this case, it's right at the bottom, so we just put 0, 0, 0. Now, if you wanted it to be a little bit lower than that, you'd do like minus 20 or however many inches below the origin you want the mass center to be. So if you want it 20 inches below the thing, or below the origin, then you put negative 20, and that's going to put it negative 20 inches below the origin. So these numbers, they're X, Y, and Z, or Z, if you want to say it like that. So Z is up, and X in this case is left and right, and Y is forward and back. So X and Y, and then Z, and Z is up and down, which is what we want, and we want it to be 20 inches down. Then we just put negative 20 there, and that is basically your collision model. If you look on the source develop or valve development wiki, I think is what it's called, development wiki. If you look on there, it'll have a lot of more options for the collision model. So if you want to do extra things, you can look on there. For Garry's mod models, generally that's all you need to worry about. If you were making a really complex model, and this is only if it's really complex, so for example, if you're making the Shinkansen bullet train in Japan, you're making a model of that, and you had to like have so many pieces to make the shape of the model, then you put max convex pieces, and then you set that to 1,000 if you want, and that'll allow you to have more pieces for your model. But you'll want to avoid that generally. You'll only raise it if you really can't avoid using more pieces. That's the only time that you would use it. So that's our QC file. So if we save that now, so that's saved on the desktop right here. And we've got our SMD. So both of your SMDs need to be in exactly the same place as the QC file. And QC file is on the desktop. So you go here and you can see that they're in the same place. So now, so you need to compile this model now. So I've put a link in the description for Crowbar, which is the compiler I use. And when you get Crowbar, you just open it like this. You shouldn't need any installation. You should be able to just use it straight out of the zip file or however you like to download it. So this is Crowbar. So it's got different tabs. We don't need to worry about these for now. It has a decompile and a compile tab. We're just going to go to the compile tab, and here we've got the QC input. So this is where the QC file is. So you see we're on the desktop right now, and we've got the QC file and the two SMDs for the visual model and the collision model. So we just want to put here top, and we'll put pile.qc. So you can call the QC file whatever you want. You can call it the same as the model, which is what I've started doing recently, and then it'll kind of line everything up for you, and then it keeps everything nice and neat and tidy. You can call it whatever you want. I used to call it compile, and you can do that too if you want. So that's the QC file location. So here, this is where we're going to output the model to. So now we're going to output the actual MDL file and its associated files. So there is 6 in total. So one of them is the MDL file, and that's what you'll see in game. So you'd browse to your Garry's Mod models folder. So you go Garry's Mod, and models, and that's where you put. So I'll just show you here. So mine is in here. So Steam libraries, Steam apps, common, Garry's Mod, models, and this is where it's going to end up. You can see I've got some models here that I'm working on. This is the path, so we can just copy this into thing, and that's already there, and that's where it's going to put the MDL file for use in Garry's Mod. So we'll be able to compile here. QC file does not exist. It's going to put it inside here. Okay. Now stop being an asshole. Control C. So I'll go compile, and so this is just where the compile folder is. And now we're going to put the name of the QC, which is locomotive test. .qc, and we can just click down here and we'll make sure that it actually is doing the file. So if it changes to QC input file, then it's going to work. So we compile that, and we can just wait. Okay, so we've got one error here. Could not load file locomotive test wheels. So that's because I didn't actually make one. So we'll just move that body group because I don't actually need it at the moment. So if you have that error, you just have to make sure that you've got test wheels inside of here. So you need to export these. I was going to export these to show you. Bogie test. I'll just show you. So I'll just bogie test. Okay, so bogie test, and we'll change that to bogie test. For bogies, I use slippery slime. Slippery slime. And the body for this would be bogie test and bogie test again. And we change that to bogie test wheels. And I didn't actually make a collision model for this, so we don't need to worry about that. I'll just use the collision model for locomotive. And now we should be able to compile it. Okay, so we look through here for any errors, and it tells us how many parts we have. So we've got 28 at the moment, and that's fine. So we have that, and it's compiled it, and there's no errors. So now the model will be in Garry's mod. So a handy thing for Garry's mod is to use the built-in Half-Life model viewer tool, and this is handy, so you don't have to start up the game to check it. You can check most things in here. So if I load model here, and we can go locomotive test, which is the model we have. Open this up, and we'll see our model in here. And we just look at our mounts. They're all there, and the texture. So the reason it's black here is because I only added black material. So there, and we can check the physics model, and you can see here that everything worked fine. If it goes like this, it draws a line along each face to tell that it's a face. And you can see we've got some here for the mount points and things like that. So if your model looks like this, so you see how it kind of looks like it's inside out. So the bottom of the frame here is kind of like that, and if you look up from underneath, it kind of disappears. That's because it's inside out. So to fix that, you go in here, and you can. A handy thing is you have to be in solid mode for it. It's here, backface culling. So that'll tell you if your normals are facing the wrong way. So you can just flip them, and then now the normals are facing the right way. You can re-export that and compile it again and refresh, and you can see that it fixes that issue. We'll just hide the physics model, and that's fine. And you can just go around and check everything, make sure nothing's inside out like that frame was, and everything looks fine. So this is what your model will look like in the game. So if everything looks fine here, then it'll look fine in the game too. So that's the model in game. I'll just show you what it looks like in game. It is handy to check it in game because there is some things that you can't check with the model viewer, like
for example, you can't check compatibility with other models. So if you wanted to make sure your bogies fit onto the model, you can't check that with Half-Life Model Viewer. You can only check individual models. So if you wanted to try it out on the track as well, you'd need to put it into the game and then test it. So we're here in beautiful Sunset Gulch in Garry's mod, and we've just spawned in now. We're just in single player. So we got a woofer, and anywhere will do. Just somewhere to spawn the model. So I'll go here. And so you'll need to go to the games and just click on Garry's mod. And you model it up here. So this is our locomotive test that we made. So you can spawn it in here. But that is in the game now. So if you do the same thing for the bogies, and you can put them underneath. So this track is standard gauge, not PHX. So that's why it looks like it fits here, and why it doesn't fit in game. The track is actually wider than the track I've got here. So for PHX, all you need to do is just make an extra bogie like this, and then you get the track. Just copy paste this one, and then you would. So what I like to do for getting the right gauge is do this, and you go. Shut up. Okay, so what you want to do with your track is you put in a cube like that, and you put in 80 inches, and that's 2.03 meters. And then now you can just line your rails up like this. We can move these over for the wheels, and so that's going to be inside out, so you can put it like that. And then you just export this, and for the collisions, what I normally do is make them a little bit less than the rail, and this is what your collisions will be for your bogies. So I'll just remove them, and then you that. Yeah, it's good to have a little point on the bottom. And you can get that, and then that, and then you just put these where the wheels would be. Turn back to solid. Gets a little bit blinding if you leave it. Okay, and then I'll just put these right where the wheels are. And at this point, it doesn't really matter where you put the side, it's up to you. The important bit is getting the bottom of the collisions in the right place, because that's the one that matters. That's the one that's going to be on the track. I'll move these down a bit as well. Okay. So that's for the treads. I'm just going to work on one and then copy paste it. So you have it like that, and then remember to keep it convex. So this is one piece for the flange, and this is another piece for the tread. And then you just move these down. Don't move this too low. You want this about, I'm going to put it less than 4 inches above the railhead. And now that'll be about where you need to put it. Sorry, no, the rails are 4 inches tall, so you can put it to 2 inches or -2 inches, and that'll be in the right place. Also get this as a sharp angle, so just bring them right to the edge like that, and then you just need to move these away from the rail a little bit. So you want to have a little bit of a clearance. I usually just put it on the back of the wheel like that. And then you can clean this up as well if you want to. So that's the collision for one wheel, and then you'd copy and paste that. So that's the 4 wheels collisions, and then all you need now. So I usually just select the corner vertices like that and copy them and make a face and then extrude them up and unhide the second bogey. This is the PHX one. Yeah, just get it right onto the I might line that up with a cursor like that. And now you can scale this out and then just line it up with the bogey frame. And then make sure it's facing the right way. So just recalculate the normals with Shift N, and that'll make sure things aren't inside out. And then you can just line it up at the bottom if you want. It doesn't matter too much where these end up. So all that really matters is the four bottoms of the wheels like that. So that's what your collision should look like. Very, very simple. And that's the collisions that you do for your bogies. Yeah, just make sure that they have a bit of clearance. I usually put it right on the back of the flange, like you see here, how it lines up just with the edge. And the thickness of the collisions for the flange, but it may be about the same as the flange, and that's usually fine. And then you'd export that. Here we go. Bogey test PHX. So this is the bogey for PHX. So if we put it on the track, so you could put a little less clearance on the bogies if you wanted to. This is a little bit much, so you can put this underneath, and there we go. Look at that on the track. And just for testing, I'm going to put a thruster on. Normally you wouldn't use a thruster. Whoop, there it is. Okay, so it's come off. So how tall are the rails here? I thought they were 4 inches. Okay, they're 8 inches. Okay. So I'll put these down at 4 inches. Z negative 4.4 4 inches. What? Negative 4 inches on the global. There we go. And since we know that wasn't the issue, I can bring these flanges back to where they were, because they are a little bit they're a little bit too of a shallow angle, so it wants to ride up on the rails. Compile and test PHX. If you change the model file slightly, so if you just put maybe B, and I can compile that again. And now if I click on something else and click back to Garry's mod and unload this again, that should work better now. Okay, so it doesn't try and ride up on the rails now, and I can put that one under here instead. So if I now, it should work better. We'll just go around a curve so you can see that it works. So you can just test on curves and through switches and just make sure that it doesn't derail. So I made it around that curve. If you want to, you can test it on the entire map and just make sure it works. But if it makes it through a switch and a curve, I'd say that's fine. So I'll just show you the mass centers. So
So here we've got the mass center right down near the wheels, and that's kind of where you want it. And as for the bogey, that's a little bit lower than the wheels, but that's fine. Don't have the mass center too low. So this is what you set with the mass center. So you see the green line goes up to the coordinate center, which is the origin, and goes right down to the mass center, which is pretty much where you want it. So that was getting a basic loco into Garry's mod. Obviously, you'd put a bit more detail onto it. Usually takes, depending on how much time you have, it can take a whole day. It could take several weeks, or even a whole year, depending on how much time you have to work on it and depending on what it is. Well, I hope you learned something. Thank you.